Hi lovelies, and welcome to the Witch's Cookery. Today we're celebrating Yule and the winter solstice together. I want to give you some ideas on how to celebrate Yule, what to do for the winter solstice, Yule rituals and kitchen witchery, the pagan history behind the holidays and customs, and of course symbolism and spellsploration for you. What can you see in this witch vlog today? Let me show you. First, we're going to take a walk through this magical winter wonderland, gathering some traditional evergreens and hear about Yule celebrations in different cultures and the pagan traces in modern day. And we shall do some scrumptious kitchen witchery with Yule-themed burning flames. I also want to introduce you to the traditional smoke cleansing methods during the Yuletide in southern Germany, doing a very meditative winter solstice ritual. And last but not least, we will conjure up a witchy brew in my new cauldron. Let's go! First and foremost, the winter solstice is a celebration of the rebirth of light. It marks the shortest day and the longest night, and after that, slowly but surely, the days will become longer again. So even though we're in the midst of winter, it is a sun festival. The people back in the days were completely dependent on nature to provide food nourishment again. So there were lots of fire and fertility rites performed in order to help the sun regain its energy and for nature to preserve its fertility. Also unrelated, but I need you to know that I'm actually really tall and this tripod is not. So every time I want to record, I have to squat. I have thighs of iron. The only worked out part of my body. Squash your head with it. Alright. And this is of course also the reason why evergreens and different plants were brought into the houses. Now I do have a little bit of green witch lore for you, so you know why we take certain plants into the house and what you can do in your witchcraft practice to incorporate them for your Yule festivities. First up, the mistletoe. We do know most about that from scripts of Pliny the Elder. The mistle grows in other trees. It's kind of like a parasitic plant, and it stays green in winter and sucks all its nutrients and whatever it needs out of its host tree. Now obviously, with certain trees being sacred in Germanic belief, the people thought that the missile would also contain the power of that certain tree. So missles grown on oak trees, for example, were considered especially powerful, even though they're very rare. Brought in the house mainly for health, but also for protection. And in a more Norse context, because we know it from some sagas there, it is actually linked to fertility, which might also explain the kiss under the mistletoe. Two plants that we know from Beltane, ivy as the feminine, holly as the masculine. So in combination, they are also a symbol of fertility. It was considered bad luck to cut down a holly tree. You would take twigs from it for strong protective magic. Obviously, it's also a little bit pointy. A lot of the pointy, thorny type of plants are always used for protection, to keep the evil spirit away. Ivy grows in the dark. It also grows in shadow. It doesn't need much light. It can grow in the forest floor, up on trees. It's an evergreen plant, which also symbolized to the people the idea of rebirth, of the re-strengthening of nature, of the re-greenery of everything. And fun fact, it was actually banned for a while from Christian churches as decor because it grows in the shadow. So it had a little bit of that evil, mistrusting character there. Where I live, we do mostly use evergreens as fir or pine to symbolize the immortality, the cycle of life. And another leftover from the Germanic traditions that made it into modern day here in Bavaria is the barbarous twig cut on the 4th of December from a cherry or an apple tree. You put it in the house in a vase and it will bloom at the winter solstice. Now for my little Yule ritual later on, I do have to gather some materials, so let's go. Yule is not a festivity that only happened in Norse or Germanic countries. The winter solstice was actually celebrated in many cultures around the world. The Western Germanic people had this big mother goddess cult. So on the 21st of December, the Anglo-Saxons actually celebrated Modrenacht or Mother's Night. And there we already have our theme. All those holidays really revolve around the idea of birth, rebirth, growth, the cycle of life. We also see that in Christmas, of course, the birth story, the birth of Christ. We see it in Afghanistan, Iraq, Tajikistan, the old Persian era where Yalda night is celebrated, Yalda meaning birth. Old Egypt was celebrating the birth of the sun god Horus. In my last vlog I already mentioned Sol Invictus and the Saturnalia in the Roman Empire. And even to this day the birth of the light idea has kept in some cultures and countries. Saint Lucia Day, very big, celebrated in Sweden with ladies dressing in white and with the red bells and wearing candles on their heads, bringing the light. Saint Lucia or Lucia, the name is not picked at random. If you know Roman mythology, you also know that Juno and Diana, goddesses that are also linked to childbirth, had sometimes the additional name of Luciana, the light bringer, the birth giver. And in the customs that we see, we can also again feel the connection between the Catholic or Christian figure of Saint Lucia with the ancient goddess of Freya in Norse mythology. One great giveaway is the traditional baked good lussekatter. Now, why that is, you find in my Instagram from last year in a post. So here in Bavaria, we do celebrate Saint Lucia. Little bit darker than the Swedes, because leave it to the Germans to ruin a perfectly good holiday and make it into something really f***ing weird. Don't know why we always have to do that. We don't have the pretty Swedish Lucia with the lights and the white dress. We actually have the blodige Lutz or Wilde Lutz, the bloody or wild Lucia. And she will go around the villages on the night of the 13th and she will be looking through the windows to spot lazy or misbehaved children. Once again, we do like to scare our offspring into obedience. And if she catches you, she takes her sickle and then she will open your stomach, put out your guts, fill it with stones, sew it back together and throw you in a pot. That's what you get for not eating your spinach. And not until long ago in the area called the Bavarian forest, it was still a custom for women to dress up as the old Lucia and go from house to house with a bucket full of the guts of an animal, because it's also the time to slaughter, and sit in complete silence in the living room and just sharpen their knives. One of those fun little Christmas traditions we have. I mentioned in my last vlog here the goddess Perchta, also similar to Freya, is the reigning queen of the winter, and she is very double-faced, so she can be like very good and kind and giving, and she can be very mean and punishing. And in the Lucia that we have here, the wild Lucy, we see her evil side coming out again. What better way to honor the rebirth of sun than with a little bit of kitchen witchery? Now, flames, candles, fire in general are very big on Yule. In part of Europe, big burning fire wheels were rolled down hills, bonfires were lit. That's why I thought of making edible flames. Also because I didn't have any cookie stencil for sunshade, but you know. These particular flames are guaranteed to keep you warm from the inside out. They have cardamom, a very famous Eastern aphrodisiac. Melted butter, and then we're gonna let it snow with some powdered sugar. Stir it until it's nice and homogeneous. Then we add some taste. Pinch of salt, a little bit of vanilla if it tickles your fancy. Bitter almond aroma, just because I think it goes very well with it and it enhances the Christmassy taste. And then in order to bring in those happy sun energies, we are going to add orange to it. I grew up associating citrus fruit smell with Christmas and Advent because that's just what we eat here and what St. Nicholas brings and stuff. My partner that grew up in a city where all streets are lined with orange trees year long, thinks that's insane. Anyway, they bring in wonderful, sunny, uplifting energies, just what we need on dark winter's night to rekindle our inner flame. Add some ground almonds. Please note this is not the same as almond flour. It won't give you the same texture. A swig of cream and then add in the flour. You could probably sift that in too, but you know, I was lazy. And then you have a very thick type of dough. Now you will need a piping bag. Of course, I couldn't find mine, so I tried to craft one. Needless to say, it didn't work. And then 5 hours later, when I finally found mine, I could actually put some little lovely flames on a lined baking tray. Dough is thick, so it does require a little bit of wrist strength, but you know, just see it as your pre-Christmas workout. They go in the oven for about only 7 to 10 minutes at 180 degrees Celsius, and then if you fancy, dunk them in a little bit of chocolate. Enjoy. Time for a lovely winter solstice ritual. And in case you're still looking for a meaningful Yule ritual that you could do, here's an idea. If you take the topic of Yule, the rebirth of light, the reawakening and re-strengthening of the sun, we can of course also apply that to our own life, letting our inner light, inner sun, inner joy grow again, nurturing the things that bring us happiness. And in order to be in a meditative headspace for brainstorming about all those things that do light my inner sun, I prepared a little herbal smoke blend. Especially the Yuletide here in Germany, otherwise called the Rauhnächte, is very much linked to smoke cleansing. I did an entire video on that last year that I will link you up here. And over my Patreon you can actually find 2 podcasts that will lead you through the Yuletide, the 12 days of Christmas, with inspiration for ritual, folk customs and beliefs for every day. And with that idea in mind, I created a special smoke blend for the season, tailored to Yule, and especially tailored to protect from negativity, from negative thoughts, and to create an atmosphere of meditation, relaxation and upliftedness, happiness, positivity. St. John's wort here in Germany is mainly considered a weather herb, so it was thrown into the fire to protect the house from lightning strike, for example. And with the wild hunt on the way, with Dona leading it on, that might be a good idea to throw in there for the Yuletide. It's also closely connected to the sun and to the other sun festivals on the wheel of year. Juniper berries related to green winter witchcraft. Juniper was considered a holy plant, very protective plant, and is often linked to ancestral magic. Mugwort is another plant that was considered magical in Celtic as well as Germanic belief, and is used for protection against all evil, as well as to open your mind to new ideas, creativity. So it's great for creating that meditative space, as is frankincense. Now for me that just smells Christmassy, probably because they have it in all the churches and you know. Said to support inner peace, meditation, heals old wounds. So all in all, with a mixture you have a very earthy type of Yule blend. Now while I'm enjoying that scent and how it works on my mind and body, I'll sit down and do a meditation on the things that really bring me joy, that fill my heart, that make my inner sun shine. And it's not so much like New Year's resolution that can be very strict and very punishing on yourself. Think more of things like self-care, reading more, traveling more, spending time with your kids, not spending time with your kids, whatever makes you glow. This idea I saw on Pinterest. I thought it was really cute. You write it on bay leaves and you put it in a pine cone. Pine cone, by the way, also a symbol for rebirth. And if you're planning on making a Yule fire, you can then light this little wishing cone only outside, please, balcony or garden, not in the house, and then use the ashes that are left for your spell work in the coming year, revolving around those topics that you were thinking about. And these kind of fire sacrifices and fire rituals were also practiced in the old pagan ways of celebrating Yule. Fruit and wine over the Yule log in order to nourish the flames, in order to help it regrow, be strong again. I think of it as a fun little uplifting Yule ritual. But before it gets too dark now, we have to go outside because I got the cutest and coolest little cast iron cauldron. I'm gonna leave you the link down below because it's perfect. If you have garden or a fire pit or anywhere where you can use it, awesome for spell work, goulash, glühwein, throw anything you want in there. It's fantastic. For someone that likes food and drink and feasting, some of the perks of the holiday season is the unapologetic day drinking of eggnog, glühwein and all the other yumminess. And you might be surprised to know that this is actually not a modern day phenomenon. This actually goes back to way when. Let me tell you a little story about pagan Norway. We do know that the Norsemen, especially during the Viking area, had seasonal drinking festivals that had to be held by law in order to secure peace, fertility of crops and triumph in battle by toasting to the Old Norse gods. And also Yule, or later Christmas, was one of those key festivity points in the year. We know that mainly because when King Haakon in the 10th century tried to Christianize Norway, laws were written down that specify certain customs. Now Haakon was more or less liberal with his Christianization approaches. He still allowed the old religions, and he really tried his best to merge, working around their beliefs and traditions. Now it was custom to brew the Yule ale, which had to be finished until the winter solstice, when then a 3-day feast would start. Now Haakon passed a law that all people had to celebrate starting the 24th a festival lasting 3 days, and it was written down that every household was to brew a certain amount of beer and bless it in the name of the Christian God. If you didn't do so, you were to pay a hefty fine. In order to make sure that everyone did celebrate, it was also law that unless you lived out in an island or high up in the mountains, you had to invite 3 other households to feast together and consume the so-called neighborhood beer. And the celebrations had to last until it was empty. The scriptures that we have speak of a measure of grain, which probably translates to roughly 4 gallons. So the peer pressure on alcohol consumption was on, and you were actually punished if you didn't drink and party. Now this year, of course, I will only take part in the partying and not in the drinking, but luckily I have this amazing alcohol-free winter witch glühwein brew that I'm sure you will love. Recipe down below.